Welcome back to the MyRadar Podcast. If you are watching here on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell. That way you always know whenever we drop a new video. And if you'd like to take the podcast on the go, we are also on SoundCloud. You can find us there, MyRadar on SoundCloud. My guest today, I don't really even know if he needs an introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. I am so excited to speak with this particular meteorologist. He is an absolute legend in the game when it comes to local news, one of the most followed meteorologists on social media. I'm sure you've seen his tweets or his marathon sessions on YouTube of some of the most significant weather events to ever occur in the southern portion of the United States. I'm joined today by ABC 3340 Chief Meteorologist James Spann, and of course, host of another podcast as well, Weather Brains. James, how are you today?
Mike, I'm well. How are you?
You know, I'm doing very, very well. I know things have been crazy up near your neck of the woods. You just have to go back 1 month from today. Well, tomorrow's the 14th. 1 month from tomorrow, I know things were crazy up near you. You were on the air for, what, 6 hours, I think the YouTube clip was?
I don't know. It's been a busy tornado season down here in Dixie Alley. March and April were jam-packed. Now that we're into middle May, it shifted back over to our buddies in Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas. We'll let them have the action for a while. We're pretty much under the ridge now, so I think we are good until the fall season in terms of severe weather. But yeah, we've had in our state, I want to say the count is up to 55 tornadoes this year. And that is many more than we typically see in an entire season. So yeah, it's been a busy year.
Yeah, to say the very least. In doing some research, by the way, to get ready for this, I saw your mean tweets video as well up on YouTube, and it makes me feel somewhat good that even meteorologists such as yourself is getting those messages, whether it's social or Twitter or Facebook or what have you. It seems like they come from all directions now.
Yeah, you know, we live in an odd time in society, and I think social media has just exposed a big light on us all, and we're learning that we're not really nice people, a lot of us, and it's just I think it's always been there. Now people can just express their anger and their rage and their hate really easily, but no, it's that deal involved a bad snow forecast, which happens a lot down here in the Deep South. You know, we're pretty good at severe convective local storms. And tornadoes and floods and hurricanes. But when it comes to winter storms, we don't have that many. And when you don't have that much experience and you don't have a lot of analogs to work with, things can go horribly wrong. So typically, whenever you have a busted snow forecast, it gets pretty rough. So I thought, well, let's just read some mean tweets on the air, you know? So I see him do that on these, national TV shows, and it's pretty funny. So all you can do is sit back and laugh. And I tell people all the time, you can't hurt my feelings because I have no feelings left to hurt.
Well, my goal today is most certainly not to hurt your feelings. James, I'd like to start with, I ask everybody this question. What was your light bulb moment where you had a weather event, or you were near a weather event, you were forecasting a weather event? What was that moment where it just clicked for you and you decided this is going to essentially what I dedicate my life to? When was that moment for you?
April 4th, 1974. That was called the super outbreak, and this is one that most people have studied in a textbook, but quite frankly, there's not many of us left that actually lived through that. Now, I was not doing this professionally. I was a senior in high school in 1974, and my hobby in 1974 was ham radio, and still is today. And I had worked for years with back then it was called civil defense, and the ham radio guys and storm spotters, and that night was rough. We had tornadoes from my state north into Canada. And at the time, it was the largest outbreak of tornadoes on record in the country. And 80 people died in my state that night. And there was an urgent need for radio operators, ham radio operators. And so they sent us north. And my high school gave me 3 days off to just go volunteer, which I was very thankful for them to do that because it changed my life. And the first spot was a little town called Jasper, Alabama. And downtown Jasper took a direct hit. It was a town of probably 8, 9, 10,000 people. And they put me at the hospital called the People's Hospital. And for some reason, they put me in the emergency room. And my job was to relay information from the hospital to the big relief agencies in Birmingham, which was about 35, 40 miles away. And the nature of the wounds of the people that came in that night were horrific. And I don't think a 17-year-old child should see that. But yet, I think I had to experience that. I've not talked about what I saw publicly or privately, and I won't. But I had night terrors for several years, and I lost my innocence that night. I wanted storms. Man, I loved them. I could not wait to work a severe weather outbreak, being the net control guy or being out in the field, looking for these things. And that changed everything. And it let me know that there's a real serious side to this. And a lot of people died, and a lot of people were really, really hurt. And so that changed everything. And I think that was the night I had to experience that for some reason. But that really started, I think, the call to get into this business.
Well, that goes along perfectly with my point that I was going to bring up next. I saw an interview with you where you were very blunt with what you said. You said that your role is to mitigate the loss of human life. I mean, typically when people think of, the weatherman on TV, it might be the sunny, happy, hey, everybody, the weather's going to be great today. Have a great day at school. The kids will be home later. The weather's good. But that can't always be the case in the world of.
Yeah, and look, most of what we do, it's routine. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of people want to get into this business and they want those big severe weather days or these big high impact events. They don't happen that often. Mostly you're in there talking in a green wall telling people it's going to be a sunny day and the humidity is low and blah, 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 blah. But from time to time, it gets serious. And we all know that. And when you're out there in that green wall, you better understand, number one, what you're talking about, the science behind it. Even though there's a lot we don't know, you need to take the knowledge we do have and express that clearly and express the danger and the uncertainty and what people need to do and be a really good communicator and a scientist at the same time. And that's hard. I mean, people think, these buffoons, they think of, Ron Burgundy and Brick Tamland on Anchorman, but this is pretty hard to do. And I tell people all the time, you don't believe me, you stand out there in that green wall for 12 hours in the midst of a horrible, horrible outbreak, and you'll see the unique challenges you face in being able to communicate coherently while processing all of this volume of data that's coming in from all of these sources, all these live streams and chat rooms and social media platforms. And that's probably the biggest challenge, is being able to process all that and stay coherent and focused on the air. And I'm not saying I do it right. I don't know if anybody does it right, but we just try and learn from our mistakes and move on. And I think the greatest help that we've received in recent years, it's not from physical scientists, but from social scientists that have really helped us communicate the need for people to do something, because we don't know anything about that. Nothing. So they've helped us out a lot.
When it comes time to call those people to action, and I've seen you bring this point up a lot on your broadcasts, that for a lot of people without the county border lines to be able to say, this is where I live on this map, it's kind of a challenge for a lot of people. Can you speak to how you guys, meteorologists on the air, play a role when it comes to trying to localize that concern to the smallest detail? I mean, you yourself will call out these barbecue restaurants that are seemingly in the middle of nowhere, but it really helps people figure out in that exact moment what exactly they're looking at on a map.
Yeah, we figured out how to do this during the event. The problem is the days leading up to the event, where you're showing maps with risks and timing. And we have learned, and I can prove it, is that most people can't find their house on a map. And we've got a real problem. We've been using mapping, and I'm not, it's not my issue. Geography literacy, I think it's horrible, but it is what it is. So I think we have to change the way we communicate risks leading up to an event, because these maps, people don't understand it. You post a map that a third grader, in my opinion, should be able to read in the first 70 questions on Facebook. What about Eastaboga? What about Clanton? What about Rockford? What about Brent? What about Centerville? What about Fayette? What about Vernon? What about Heflin? They can't find their house on that map. It's like Greek to them. So we have to work on that. But yeah, during the event, we've got that figured out. And I think that's important for everybody that does this on-camera work, is that you really need to understand your market. You need to understand the culture, the people, and especially the geography. Because if you say a tornado, you get on the air and you read the text of a warning from the Weather Service, and it says there's a tornado 14 miles southwest of Clanton. Nobody knows where that is. But if you say it's near Jim's Pit Barbecue, then everybody knows where that is. So by calling out landmarks that people understand, we've learned that's pretty effective. And we could do that easily when the event is underway.
So before we go back to 2011, because I absolutely want to talk to you about that particular event, let's talk about the event that occurred about a month ago in your state of Alabama on April 14th. The clip that I saw on YouTube, you were on the air for 6+ hours, and it was rather late as well. That got started close to midnight. Can you take me through what that event was like for you and your on-air partner, with it being that late at night, and of course, just the challenges of that particular forecast? What was that like?
Welcome to Dixie Alley. It's like we get these a lot, and the challenges we face, obviously, during and this was a weekend. This was a Saturday night, Sunday morning. So number one, your cameras just aren't good. I mean, in your spotters in the field, you're going to see pitch black and lightning strikes illuminating the sky from time to time. And you might catch something if you're lucky, but that's hard. And we know that people will take action if they see a live video stream of a tornado. And often when they see radar, they don't do anything. They see a bucket of spill paint. You can talk, ooh, look at this lowered CC over here. And talk about debris being lofted, and you can be just as focused and as clear as you can. But when people see a live video stream of a tornado, they will go to the hole. They will get down to that safe place. So that's the biggest challenge, is that we just can't. We're stuck showing radar a lot for hours and hours in the middle of the night, and that's just not good. And I hate that, but it is what it is. And even if we could see something with lightning, often these tornadoes are rain wraps. So you try and rely on any truth you can get from social media. And that's one thing about it. There's bad things about it, and there's good things about it. The nice thing about social media, for me, it's the input we get during severe weather. If you process all the data in images, reports, video coming in from the big four, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat, you're going to get some jewels in there. You just have to be able to look and find it. And the way I do it, I just take it straight to air. I don't, it doesn't go through some graphics department or get some approval from, some guy. I am very blessed to have the freedom to do whatever I need to do. So it just goes straight to air. But we did have an event back in March, Mike, on March 3rd, where 23 people were killed here. That was a daytime event. And that set us back a little bit. We were starting to think we're getting pretty good at this. All the social scientists have helped us, and we're so much better now. And all of a sudden you take a setback. That was March 3rd of this year. And it was not in my television market. It was just south of here in the Montgomery, Alabama television market. But Josh Johnson and all the meteorologists down there did a marvelous job. But yet 23 people died, and the warnings were really good. And so, again, we throw up our hand at the social scientists and say, what's the deal? And in that situation, it was mostly the density of manufactured housing, mobile homes. And we got a problem down here in the Dixie Alley. We've got to come up with something. There's something we're missing. Asking people to sit in a community shelter for 6 hours during a tornado watch. Let's be real. That's not realistic. I mean, it's like a sardine can in these things. And you'll have some people in there that haven't bathed in 5 days, and some people that have been drinking, and it's just not a good situation. And you're bringing your kids in there. Nobody's going to sit in those things for 6 hours. We've got to come up with some type of intermediate step, in my opinion, between a watch and a warning to give them a chance to go. And I think these SPC mesoscale discussions are really getting good. Rich Thompson and John Hart and Roger Edwards and all these men and women that work out there, their MCDs are darn good. And I think that might be the key. But that did set us back. That was back in March of this year.
I'm glad that you brought up the manufactured homes concern, because that is absolutely a very, very real concern. I used to say on the air all the time, mobile homes become mobile. It's in the name. It is not a safe place to be. Can you touch on why exactly that is? And you had said that you guys do have a big problem in Dixie Alley. Would you say that people that live in those mobile homes are maybe not necessarily listening to the warnings, or is it just the nature of the fact that they're not exactly the safest places to be during these kinds of events?
It's complicated. We've learned that. Kim Cloco McLean of our weather branch, she's great. She spent some time down in Lee County where this thing happened, and she's been helping us. And Here's the issue. Number one, there's some conflicting messaging going on that they're hearing from some people that mobile homes are perfectly safe during a tornado, which is not true. And the other problem for a lot of people live in a manufactured house, they don't have transportation to go 10 miles to the nearest
Right.
shelter. They don't have transportation to go to a truck stop that might be a better opportunity for them to be safe. They have no way of getting there. And for some people, the nearest shelter or site built open shelter is more than 10 minutes away. And let's face it, we're not that good sometimes. We can't promise a 10-minute warning every time. Most tornadoes are small. They're not these big 4s and 5s. They're the small ones. And you might get a 2-3 minute lead time sometimes. And sometimes it might be no lead time at all. And so, that's the problem. And then you also have, in the case of Lee County, a lot of people thought they just don't happen there, big tornadoes, because it has been so long since they've happened there. And that's human nature. You don't have a fire for 30 years, you don't think about fires. So it's a complex social science problem that we need to work on. But I do believe that every manufactured home in tornado-prone areas at the least ought to have a weather radio. Come on, I mean, stick a $29 weather radio in there. That's a start, and that's not that hard to do. And let me just say this, I think they're marvelous housing. They are wonderful, affordable housing. I'm their biggest fan. But cars are great too. Cars get you to work. They get you to your vacation spot. But a car is a death trap during a tornado, as is a mobile home, because winds get up under it and they flip and they're gone in no time at all, even with the tie downs. So it's a complex social science problem that we've got to tackle.
So let's talk about April 2011. Leading into that event a month ago, I start the broadcast by saying, folks, it's going to be a long night. I'd have to imagine that going to sleep the evening before the big day in April 2011, you're probably thinking somewhere along those lines. What was it like waking up on that morning, knowing that what was about to come is likely not going to be replicated, potentially in our lifetimes, potentially, who knows? What was it like when you woke up that morning knowing what was to come? 2011.
Well, thankfully, didn't have time to think about it. It was a rude wake-up call because, quite frankly, the night before, all of the good mesoscale models didn't suggest the morning would be that bad. So I was going to try and do a normal morning shift at my house and then come into work about mid-morning and then gear up for the big show in the afternoon and the evening. But we had a really rough morning. We had basically a QLCS with a few embedded tornadoes, a lot of straight line wind damage that killed 5 people and knocked out power to 250,000 people between 3 and 10 a.m. So my wake-up call that morning was a tornado warning for the far western counties of the state. And so it was an excessively quick shower, an excessively quick ride into work, and there was no time to think about the history of the day or what could happen that day. You're just thinking, you got to get in there and let's get to work on this situation. So the morning event lasted, and Jason Simpson, who was in here with me, if you watch the YouTube stuff, you've seen Jason. He was the guy with me, and Jason is just great. Jason's the chief meteorologist for the CBS channel in Huntsville, Alabama now. But Jason was by himself when that morning thing started because I was not there with him. But we stayed on the air until about 9 o'clock, and we had a little midday lull, and we were severely damaged. And again, during that lull, we didn't have time to think about the historic potential of the day because we had so much work to do. We had cameras down, we had internet outages, we had microwave paths down, and all these engineers were just saying, this is not working, this is not. And I said, guys, time out. Let's change this up. Tell us what is working because we've got to get through a really bad day. But I'll give those guys credit. They really worked hard to get some of those cameras back online, which helped us later in the day. But the big show came between about 2 o'clock and midnight, that 8-hour stretch. And again, history will judge us for what we did, the work that we did. Obviously, the only number that matters to me is 252. That's the number of people that died on my watch that day, which is absolutely inexcusable for anybody in the weather enterprise. And I'm not saying that, the blame is all on me or anybody else, but I know that we've got work to do. I thought the death toll that day should have been 30. In 30 cases, people heard the warning, they did the right thing, and it was just their day. But for 222 of those people, they ought to be listening to this show right now and having dinner with their family. And these were precious people that died. And what I'm trying to do, Mike, is memorize the names of everybody that died that day. to motivate me. And I'm about halfway there, but I'm learning who they are, their stories, more about their families. I've had a chance to meet many of the families, and we've talked and we've laughed and we've cried, and we've got to do better. The people have to do better, and we have to do better in the weather enterprise. So, but we missed it, Mike. We missed the day. We missed the history of the day. We missed the historical impact, the magnitude of the event. We were so busy. We didn't have time to think about
When
it.
you're caught up in the moment, I'd have to imagine you're really just trying to keep everything kind of just going at that point. I mean, 8 hours, 13 minutes, and 15 seconds. That's at least how long the YouTube broadcast is. When you are looking at that tornado on that webcam, or on that the tower camera, and it goes out, what's going through your mind at that moment? I can't imagine that's a sight that you see on an everyday basis, that storm sitting right over top of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, right near the football stadium.
Yeah, and and understand we had 62 tornadoes that
Right.
day. That was just one of
Crazy.
them. And what's so sad, a lot of the stories were never told, and of smaller towns, and there's just amazing stories that have never been told about that day. But obviously, that one got a lot of attention, and that's kind of a special place to me. I moved to Tuscaloosa when I started fifth grade. My father abandoned me and my mom when I was in second grade. We lived in a small town in South Alabama called Greenville, and we would move to Tuscaloosa when I started fifth. My mom had to finish a year at the University of Alabama, and we were broke and didn't know anybody. And there were some marvelous people that loved us and helped us and encouraged us. And so, but again, I didn't have time to think about it. I did not have time to think about it.
I don't blame you.
My in-laws were there. All this stuff going through your mind. We were just too busy trying to process data and information and communicate this stuff clearly. And it dawned on it. We started to think about it the days after it happened. But understand when the tower went out, the power went out for the camera in Tuscaloosa, and we had to go back to radar. We were totally focused because on that trajectory, the next population center in line is Birmingham, the largest city in the state. And so we knew that in about 45 or 50 minutes, if it stays down, you've got this large violent tornado, and you don't know if it's a 3, 4, 5. You have no idea what the EF number is, but it doesn't matter. Based on the atmospheric conditions and what's happened, this is bad. And all of a sudden, you've got this, big population center right in the path of this thing. So you had to stay focused and get people in Birmingham ready for that. And of course, the problem we have with the news department is that they're getting in my ear saying, we've got this catastrophic damage with these live shots coming from Tuscaloosa. We need to take this on the air. And I don't take it because if we start going to all this damage in Tuscaloosa, then I'm not communicating the risk to Birmingham and places like Concord and Pleasant Grove and Oak Grove and Rock Creek and Sylvan Springs and McDonald Chapel, Pratt City, all these communities in Birmingham. I did go to it briefly because I do think there's merit if you see what this has done. Look at this. This is absolute chaos. This is catastrophic damage. I'll show you 10 seconds of that, but this is the same tornado that's about to approach Birmingham. But all these decisions we have to make on the fly, and I'm very, very blessed. Most meteorologists aren't in my position. I've got full control. I can override anybody on these calls. And I think I know, and I think this is true for any on-air meteorologist, we know better than anybody else what needs to be on the air during this tornado coverage. And if we start going to some reporter that's standing by a tree limb that's been blown down, where you've got a horrible, you just can't do that. So I'm very blessed to have that freedom here. But it came up through Birmingham and killed more people here. That was a tough one.
With so much going on, as you mentioned, so much going on. You're thinking about so many things, potential engineering issues. How do you remain so calm as calm as you can be during these events, being able to call out these locations, say the cross streets, say the barbecue restaurants right near there? Just looking at that tower camera, you were saying the roads that it was near, without knowing, or at least looking right at it, the police station. You were just so calm, so zen. What's the secret?
To me, I think part of the secret is going out and speaking to schools every day.
Getting those killer cakes, might I add. I see them on Twitter all the time.
The
crazy.
one today was unstinking believable. I mean, wow. I have I've never seen anything like that. But when you do that, and again, I know some meteorologists, and they say they're busy and they have family things to do and they need some sleep. I hear you, but if you really want to be good and if you really want to connect with people, you need to be in a school every day. I do two a day. I did two today. And some people do two a month and they think they're heroes. I do two a day. Here's the beauty of this whole thing. If you do that, number one, you're teaching kids science. You're getting them truly excited. I say some of you girls are going to work in science one day. Some of you boys are going to work in science one day. You introduce them to this, and it's easy for them to understand. So it's a win-win. And while you're traveling to these schools, you pick up this vast knowledge of the geography, the lay of the land, landmarks that people understand, and you talk with people and you get input on what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, and you mesh into the culture. And so many meteorologists don't do that they stay in the well polished mahogany desk rooms that we have in these TV stations, and we don't get out in the world, and we find them offensive, or we don't like to get out. That's insane. I mean, we need to be in Dollar Generals and Walmarts and Targets where real people are and talk with them. So doing the school thing every day, it burns into your brain. And yes, I've been here a long time. I was in Dallas for a few years, but other than that, I've been here the whole time. And so I think there's merit to speaking in a school every day, staying in a market for longer than 6 months, bouncing. And I understand everybody needs to move up. Yeah, that's cool. But some people like change jobs every 6 months. I mean, here's an idea. Just stay someplace for a few years. You might fall in love with it, and people latch onto you, and life gets really good. So that helps in terms of being able to call out those places, those landmarks on the air. It's just, I don't need to look at a map. I don't need to, it's just here. It's right in my database in my brain, and it flows out. It's useless information except when there's tornadoes flying.
Hey, well, it's useful information in that regard. So how has the weather and the business, the enterprise, how has it changed since you got into the business to where it is today? And as you touched on at the beginning of this, the advent of social media for let alone local news has just changed the entire landscape of the world, making us more interconnected than ever. How has that impacted weather industry, at least from your perspective?
Well, look, let's be honest. Our business model is dying. Not the business, but the business model. And this is normal for all businesses. Models die, new models emerge. I'm excited for the future. I think some marvelous things are going to happen here. But, I got into this in the late 1970s. I'm old as dirt. I was 22 years old when I started doing this. And so back in those days, we were it. I mean, you had the news at 6 and 10 o'clock. If you wanted to know the weather, you waited until the weather came on. And of course, those days passed us by long, long, long ago. The weather app on a smartphone became the dominant source of weather for most Americans by 2011 to 2012. That was 7 years ago, 8 years ago. The iPhone came out in 2007. So we have not been the main distribution platform for regular weather forecasts for a long time. And of course, we all provide products and services on the phones and on the digital side, but I think we still have value. I kind of study how these news numbers work. In fact, I did a question on my Facebook page Sunday morning about this. Interesting you ask. What is it that makes it relevant to you? What purpose do we have on normal days? We understand our purpose on tornado days. We've got that. But on a regular day when it's sunny, what do you want from us? What would make you come back and watch a television newscast? And the responses were just really good. But I think we're here to be storytellers. I think we're here to do some explaining of science. I think we're here to provide value to what people get on their phone. And we've learned that most people don't even download an app. They just use the stock app on their phone. So when you look at the weather for a day, it's going to have a high low and a cartoon picture of some weather cloud or lightning bolt and then a chance of rain. That doesn't tell you anything about uncertainty, timing, magnitude of the event. We can really provide some value-added products and services on television to complement the smartphones. So I think we'll be around, but I do think it needs to change. I mean, I look at these newscasts we're doing, and we're still doing 1980s newscasts here. And until this audience dies, and they're getting old and they'll pass away, that's when they have to reinvent the wheel. And I might be retired by then, maybe not, but we got to start thinking about it now.
James, I could talk to you for hours about weather, but I feel like I've taken up a ton of your time already. Let me close with this. What advice do you have to the next generation, whether they be just normal person or somebody that wants to follow in your footsteps, be the next James Spann and forecast the weather for Alabama? What advice would you have for that young forecaster coming up today?
Well, first thing to do is latch onto the science. I'm very bullish on a lot of old guys like me talk bad about, millennials and all these younger guys. I don't. I think they're brilliant. I think they're absolutely like you. I think you're brilliant and you work
I'll
hard
take it.
and you're smart. And I honestly am so excited about the future. There's so many things we can't do. I can't tell people on a summer afternoon when and where it's going to rain. I know it's going to rain every day, but I can't predict air mass thunderstorms placement and timing. Your generation might have a grasp on that. Take on these challenges and dive into them on the science side and try and solve them. Winter storms down here where I am in Dixie Alley. Goodness gracious, how bad are we with those things from time to time? So try and dive into the science and understand too that as you're doing that, you have to be a communicator, even if you work for NOAA, because every Weather Service office has a Facebook page and they're doing Facebook Lives and they've all got Twitter accounts. You have to be a communicator. You can't be a hermit. You have to learn how to relate to people. And mainly it's the fact that you need a servant's heart. I was a jerk for a long time, and I think a lot of us fight that. We're selfish. Maybe it's just naturally part of growing up. I don't know. But I was in my 20s and my 30s, I bought into what the world teaches, which is to look out for number one, which is not true. To really have a marvelous life, you need to realize that we're here to help other people. And if you're working in this weather enterprise, that's the reason you're here. This is a servant position. You're here to help others on routine days and on days when somebody's life could be lost because of weather. And if you understand that, then everything starts to really get good. You have a sense of purpose. You have a marvelous opportunity that nobody else has to really, truly save someone's life when the weather's dangerous. And on good weather days, help them out too. And once you adopt that philosophy, grasp the science, have a servant's heart, you'll do just fine. And work hard. That's the other thing I was going to say. And we'll close her out here. I'll give you a secret. I'm not good at anything I do. I'm really not. But let me tell you what, I will work harder than anybody else to accomplish a task. And that work ethic has really helped me. I had to go to work at a very young age because of my family situation, my home situation. And I had to work to survive. A lot of people have not gone through that deal where you're broke and you just survive and you struggle. But it really helped me. And that work ethic has helped too. I've not slept since 1973, but I'll sleep when I'm dead. I can't wait to come to work every day. So, grasp the science, have a servant's heart, and that good work ethic, and you'll do wonders.
That's absolutely fantastic advice, James. Is there anything else that you would like to mention or talk about that I might not have asked you about?
Man, I live a dull life. I'll just say this, the crazy thing about me, I can't wait to come to work every day. Most of these old geezers like me, they start getting cranky and I don't want to be like that. I love coming to work every day. I have the chance to communicate what I love across all these platforms now. And that's the other thing too, in terms of advice on this social stuff. I understand it's frustrating. Listen, the haters are going to hate. They're going to come after you and me and everybody. The drive-by haters, they're everywhere. Blow them off. Forget these guys. There are some people that really have good questions. And if they come to you on your Twitter feed, on your Facebook page, over on Instagram, if they come to you, that should be an honor. Think of all of the weather people in the world and they chose you. So here's an idea. Answer them. And people say, well, I don't have time. I don't have time either, but I get it done. So just consider that part of the communication process and enjoy it and love every day. That's what I've done.
This was fantastic, James. And for those of you watching, listening, James's Twitter account is below. His social media information is in the description box below. Of course, you can catch him on ABC 3340 and, of course, on Weather Brains as well. James, thank you so much for doing this again. I would love to talk to you again. It just depends on when the next situation occurs. I know you're a very busy man, but we can certainly try to make it work the next time you have some availability.
Okay, Mike, thanks a lot. Enjoyed it. Have a great
Thank you
night.
so much again, James. Appreciate it very much.
Okay, see you later.